Right, now what I've done here is I've looked at the volume radar. Now remember, I look at my radars after I've looked at these individual data mining sets. So when I'm looking at the volume radar, again with 3i, oh no, actually let's just pick something else. Let's pick, for argument's sake, the Aberfirth Smaller Companies Trust. What am I looking at here? There's several things. First of all, what you can see here is the positive volume index and the negative volume index, and they're two colors. Well, what do they mean? The positive volume index focuses on days where the volume has significantly increased from the previous day's trading. It tries to determine what the smart investors are doing. When trading volume is high, it's thought that the inexperienced investors are involved, whereas on slow days, shrewd investors quietly buy or sell the stock. Yeah? So, when trading volume is high, it's thought that the inexperienced investors are involved, whereas on slow days, shrewd investors are. When the positive and negative volume lines cross each other, that can often signify the start of a new trend. And you can see there, you get a bit of a crossover, it's just bang low. Now, it's not a scientific one in the sense of, it's not one where I'm going to look at it and say, oh yeah, definitely. But you can see when they're proximate, you can often get that move, that change in direction. Again, change in direction. It's not always the case, you see that happening there, nothing really much. Again, here, okay, they touched, didn't cross, change in direction. I'm really looking for proximity, albeit I'm well aware that you'll get situations like this where I just won't get them. And why am I looking at this? Well, I'm only giving 10% weight to these charts. I'm actually going to be looking at these indicators down here more, but the reason I look at it is because a lot of other people look at volume, and when they look at volume, it often signifies that there's money that's going to go into a stock based upon those reasonings. And if there is, then we want to make sure that we're on the back of it. So again, you see the crossover and you see the sharp change in trends. Yeah, that's essentially it. And just again, to explain what it does, it tries to determine what smart investors are doing. When trading volume is high, it's thought that inexperienced investors are involved, whereas on slow days, shrewd investors quietly buying or selling a stock. And it's the crossover we're looking for. Now, what about these? What about down here, the candle volume charts? And you can see them there. Especially if I try and resize these, then what you've got is basically the same charts as these. So you've got, these are the Western candlesticks where, of course, that's the low, that little horizontal line is the open, that horizontal line over here is the close, and the high is represented by the peak. So the low is down here, the high is up there. Yeah. Well, with these Japanese candlesticks, what you've got is, if it's a black bar, it means that the open, it means it's a falling price, so it means the open is higher than the close. If it's a white bar, it means the open is lower than the close. Now, the body represents the open and the close parts, and the wick, because it's a candle, represents how high or low the price traded. And obviously the bottom end of the wick is the low and the top is the high. If there's no wick, it means it opened at its high, closed at its low. Now, the width of these bars represent volume and how much was traded. So they're trying to tell you two things, what the price did and the amount of volume with which it did it. And you can see how over here it then gives you quite an interesting perspective. And as you can see, when we're looking at the Japanese candlesticks, now there's a lot of Japanese candlesticks patterns, of course, which I won't go into detail here, but I will in the monthly newsletter occasionally mention those, which give us an indication of how the markets are doing. So how do I actually look at this? What am I actually going to be doing? Well, first of all, as I said, I will look at these indicators first. I will then look at this to see, well, for instance, if I look at the bearish momentum indicator for argument's sake, well, actually let's do that. Let's actually have a look at it. And let's pick on next. And then let's pick on the volume indicator there and have a look at it. Well, what I'll probably say with something like this is, well, I can see the solid downward trend. I'm a bit worried that we might be rising up, especially because we've had a bit of a crossover anyway on these two indicators, and my concern would be that the trend's not going to continue lower. And equally with the volume, a lot of the volume has gone through this. So whilst I look at the bearish momentum indicator, which is obviously a backward looking indicator, I would temper my thoughts that whilst this is slightly rising, will it continue upwards or will it continue lower? And I'd really keep an eye on this to say, well, if it falls back below, say, 13, then yes, let's short it and let's look at a level down here and keep a close eye on this to make sure it's doing the types of things I indicated. And similarly, see if the candle volume shows big black fat candlesticks, because the fatter the candlestick, the more the indication is that the move downwards has some meaning behind it, as opposed to just being a light movement with low volume. On balance volume over here, this is actually a momentum indicator, and the idea is that when the volume increases or decreases dramatically without any significant change in the price, then the notion is that the price will spring upwards. Now, I'm not big into on-balance volume indicators, etc., but I do tend to have a look at it just in case. And again, as I say, the idea is you get a sharp movement in this, but you don't in the price. It suggests the price will follow. So this is supposed to be a leading indicator. It gives you some idea beforehand, before something moves, as to what it might do.